So in terms of the way that you guys mentor, is there some kind of framework that you use to mentor? Is it an organic thing? Do you encourage some of the older people in your church to mentor the younger? What does that look like for you guys?
We definitely have a variety of those things. So we have something that we've called that is called Livewire Leadership, which is basically anyone that has been a part of serving, but then they want to develop in leadership. We have I think it's a 10-week course where we run them through some curriculum that we've created, as well as partnered with some foundational doctrinal belief handbooks, which helps to get them at a very stable base level of what do you believe first.
Right.
And so we run that as a course, which is a lot of fun, and we really enjoy doing that. But I would say most of our leadership development does come down to the organic nature of relationship.
Right.
However, for that to be multiplied, it means that leaders need to be multiplied, because Ben and I, as the lead pastors, can't do that for everyone in our church. I'm very thankful that our church is growing, because it means that it's healthy. Healthy things grow. And so I'm thankful for that. But what it does mean is that the intimacy of your pastors being the only ones that sow into you from a leadership point is changing. Because, well, one, I'm not a superhero, and nor do I want to communicate the message that I can do it all, because I can't. But there are other people that are going to do a better job of developing others than me. But that means I have to do my part in developing the few that I've got, and then they develop the few. And so you start with that whole core group, which is a small group. And my focus is on that group to lead and develop them. And then they need to have that same mindset that they would have a core group, that they would lead and develop leaders. And so it's got to be this multiplying thing, which means you as the head need to be releasing and not controlling when it comes to trusting that the work that God has done in your leaders, through you, by the way, is actually good work, and that you trust those leaders to help develop new leaders. And so it is a flow-on effect. I would love to see more of the older generations re-engage in that discipleship process. I think what can happen is they've done their part as a millennial, they did their 20s and their 30s. And then they had their family, and then their kids have moved on, and they're now in their downtime.
You can cruise.
And I was like, oh man, mission is still there's still a lot of people that need to encounter Jesus.
Absolutely.
Which means if your part is developing leaders, then can you please open up your home to do that?
That's really interesting you said that. Yesterday, I read this statistic. Only 4% of Generation Z have a biblical worldview, compared with 10% of boomers. So if those 10% of boomers who've got a good biblical worldview, and you talked about doctrine, can mentor those guys who, the 4% who only, I guess, can pick and choose maybe because of the signs of the times, that seems like a good combination, because you're talking about intergenerationality of church. Is that something that you guys are wanting to grow in? Are you seeking out the kind of the older, the wiser to come join you guys at Avon? What does that look like for you? Is that challenging or?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a work in progress. That is, we have a couple of really key great boomers and above. This past year has changed the engagement of those people due to different viewpoints on the pandemic and wanting to be engaged in community. The table was definitely taken away from everyone last year in 2020 when the pandemic hit, the dining table where everyone would share a meal and talk of the things of God. And I think boomers can do that really well. And so it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to be wired on a Sunday to attend a course, but would you open up your doors and your table for someone to come and sit at and hear you? And I also think we need to re-encourage the boomers. It's you guys actually are amazing. You have so much that we need. And I think what can happen with new and young generations is that they have the new and the shiny.
Yeah.
We don't need what was. But I'm like, oh, you fully do need what was. like we need the intergenerational church. And so boomers, if there's any of you listening today, you actually have so much that the church needs.
Yeah.
So don't disengage out of thinking that your time's done.
Yeah.
Because if we want to have a biblically literate church, which we need, we need the upswing on that right now, we need the boomers to invest. Like, we have a couple of boomers at our church, and every birthday, anytime it's their kid's birthday, they read whatever their year is. So if they're 30, they read Psalms 30 to them. Like, that's what they do just around the table.
Right.
And it seems like, oh, that's sweet. But I'm like, that's foundational because it's bringing them to the word. And I think what we've had in church in the past, and I don't think anyone should ever critique what the church is, because then you're critiquing the bride of Christ, to the point of dismissing it completely. Do you need to address issues? 100%. What I'm saying is the church as the bride is still beautiful and we need to celebrate her. But I think what has happened is that in a way of attracting people, we've taken a lot of liturgy out of church and a lot of even referencing what you're saying is from the Bible. We have a lot of great things that we say, but do we actually say this is from the word of God?
Okay.
You can say great quotes and it can sound really cool and you can chuck it on a bumper sticker or whatever.
Yeah.
But do people know it's the living word of God that you're speaking? And a lot of that gap of Gen Zs being biblically illiterate is that sometimes they don't know that what they're hearing in church is Bible.
Right.
Because they're not being asked to turn to the Bible.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to bring their Bible to church, although I do think that should be a good practice.
Good old paper Bible. What's wrong with that?
Come on. But people need to be encouraged to search the Bible because it's like a treasure chest.
Yeah.
There's so much good stuff in it. And so boomers, we definitely need boomers and above, because they have more word in them if they've been consistently faithful in their faith for years.
Yeah.
They've had more time to soak in the word of God, and we need that.
Amazing. So where millennials are probably the most informed generation that's ever been,